Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Of course, the Saints did lose on Thursday Night Football to the Rams, and with the Saints falling below 500 at 7-8, 2 games to play, they're a road dog against Tampa, and we'll see how they finish. There's not many people expecting much, except Saints fans that are expecting change. If Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network and NFL media is right, the Saints could be sticking with the status quo. Here was Ian Rappaport on Friday.
Yeah, and, to me, first I want to go back to what you guys said about that decision at the end of the first half. I actually thought it was a good decision. The outcome was bad. It was the kind of game where you knew the Rams were going to score, and watching Sean McVay go for it on 4th down from the 2 or whatever that was early on made me think, all right, the Saints have to match that aggression. They did. They just didn't execute well. But the spotlight is going to shine on the Saints a little bit. As we get later in the season, as the playoffs, they're not out of it. They can certainly win 2 in a row and potentially get in the playoffs. But it's a little bit of an uphill climb. And then, of course, this is the time of year where everyone talks about what does this mean for job status. My understanding is that Dennis Allen is in a good spot. Obviously, if it goes horrific at the end of the year, this is always subject to change. Life is subject to change. But that is where it stands right now. I think one of the reasons is they're not getting out of where they are anytime soon. You have Derek Carr, who's fully guaranteed for next year. Could they move on? I don't know. I don't think they'd want to, but, it's expensive if they decide to. You have a roster that's getting a little older, getting a little slower. It's still really expensive. Off the edge, probably not as fast and twitchy as you would like, especially with some of the injuries. If they're going to rebuild, they're going to have to actually rebuild. And it just doesn't feel like that's something you do with a completely new coach. And you can't do it next year basically anyway. So it does seem prime for a reboot in New Orleans.
Okay, so Ian Rappaport saying that we're primed for a reboot in New Orleans. And God help us if that happens, because you will lose the entire fan base. I want to be clear. I know there's a lot of people that are going to roll their eyes and say, well, they've already lost the fan base. Not exactly. What I'm talking about is not anger. What I'm talking about is apathy. And there's a big difference. I'll compare it to a different sport very quickly, but you'll understand it when I do. LSU basketball. That is apathy. LSU played a basketball game last night. I do a 3-hour radio show. Did not mention that one time in 3 hours. Why? Nobody cares. Win or lose, that is apathy. People still care right now with the Saints. They're disappointed. They're angry. They want change. There's still emotion behind it. The problem comes in when your team is losing and you stop caring that they're losing. That's when apathy sets in. You stop watching the game. You stop going to the game. You accept the fact that your team is going to stink. There's nothing you can do about it, and you'll re-engage at some point down the line. The Saints aren't there yet. But if you run it back with this same crew, then apathy will start to set in. If you run it back with Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael and Derek Carr and this whole thing again, and you try to force feed people for the 3rd consecutive year this thing, people are going to disengage. And that's when you have a real problem. That's the rut that the worst franchises in the NFL see themselves fall into, that they can never quite get enough traction to get out of. The Bengals were in that rut for a long time, and Joe Burrow came. The Lions. The Saints were in that rut for 40 years until Drew Brees came and Sean Payton. So you could easily fall back into that rut of apathy if you run this back another year. The point that Rappaport made, though, is, can you even move on from Derek Carr? This is the tricky one, because this is the one that I think a lot of people lose sight of. There was a text that I got into the show from a guy named Daryl, who said, Matt, if the Saints were able to trade Derek Carr, who would be a good candidate to trade for him? Nobody. Literally nobody. He is not a tradable asset. Because remember, you're not just trading a player, you're trading a contract. Derek Carr, next year, his cap hit is $35.7 million. And then in 2025, his cap hit is $45 million. And then in 2026, his cap hit is $55 million. If you trade Derek Carr to somebody, you're trading that contract. Who in the world, in their right mind, would give you an asset to take that player on that contract? Nobody. What's more is you have to look at the dead money. If you're not familiar, dead money means if the player is not on your roster, this is how much it costs you. Derek Carr, I told you next year's cap hit is $35.7 million. If Derek Carr is on the Saints, he costs you $35.7 million. So you can say, well, cut him. If he's not on your roster, his dead cap number is $52.8 million. Meaning it would cost you another $17 million for Derek Carr not to be on your roster than it would for him to be on your roster. So in every way, it makes no sense to move on from Derek Carr after the season. Like, you don't even have an off-ramp from this contract until 2026. After next year, you could eat $17 million, which is a better proposition than paying him $45. So you'd save $30 million against the cap in 2025. But next year, Derek Carr, the easiest way I could say it, Derek Carr is on your roster in 2024. Period. There is no way around that. Derek Carr will, unless if he retires, Derek Carr is on your roster in 2024. Period. Paragraph. End of discussion. No way around that. That is an absolute. And I don't talk in absolutes. So you've got to start with that understanding and acceptance that Derek Carr is back. So as Rappaport was saying, the thing that I don't really jive with is he says, would you really rebuild with a new coach? Yeah. Why would you rebuild with a retread? Why would you try to rebuild with Dennis Allen? You've seen this song and dance. He went four in Oakland. He went 4-12, 4-12, 0-4, got fired. Comes to New Orleans. Wins 7 games last year. He sit on 7 games this year. He stinks. I'm not giving him the opportunity to rebuild. I'm going to find a young assistant, an offensive-minded assistant that can take me through a rebuild where I can be patient with a young quarterback. The example I give all the time is Zach Taylor. You can look at a career coaching record, and it doesn't tell the whole story. If you look at Zach Taylor of the Cincinnati Bengals, Zach Taylor is 40 years old. Zach Taylor turned 40 in May. And if you look at his career coaching record, brother, it ain't pretty. His career coaching record is 36-42-1. He has a sub-500 coaching record. You may look at that and go, man, he's really not that good. Oh, but wait. In 2019, his first year in Cincinnati, inherited a dumpster fire. They were 2-14. Terrible. Then they drafted Joe Burrow. And in his first year, Burrow doubled their win total. They went 4-11-1. And of course, Burrow had his knee explode midway through that season. And then Burrow comes back off that injury. They go 10-7, go to the Super Bowl. Last year they were 12-4 AFC Championship game. Right now they're 8-6. Again, winning games with Jake Browning at quarterback. So Zach Taylor, his record is sub 500, but his wins by year 2, 4, 10, 12, and now he's 8-6 with 3 to play. So when I look at Dennis Allen, I've got enough of a sample size to know what he is. He's never had a winning season. So I'm not running it back with Dennis Allen no matter what, even if Derek Carr is back. Regardless of what happens over the next 2 weeks, what I would like to see happen, and I don't think it's going to happen, but what I would like to see happen is you fire Dennis Allen, you hire a young offensive-minded head coach, you draft in the first round a quarterback, potentially let them sit behind Derek Carr for a year, the same way Patrick Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith, give him a redshirt year, and then you start to rebuild this roster through the draft and start to get younger and move on with whoever your new head coach and new quarterback will be. Next year is basically a punt. And then in 2025 is when you really look to start to make steps toward progress in your future, what your franchise is going to be. I was okay, y'all. I'm going to say this again. I was okay with the Saints' win now mentality when you had Drew Brees. You were all in to win now because the window with Drew Brees was closing, the clock on his career was ticking, and you were trying to get another Super Bowl. And so you bought on credit. You did a whole bunch of bad contracts. You kept trading up in the draft. You were super aggressive. You were constantly pedal to the metal, flooring it, gas mileage be damned, because you were trying to win a Super Bowl. And you didn't get it. You were close. You got Nolan no-called out of a Super Bowl. A legacy-defining Super Bowl for Peyton and Breeze. It would have been their second. Because they would have gone and they would have beaten the Patriots in that Super Bowl. And Brady would be on 6. And Breeze would have 2. He would have beaten Peyton Manning and Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. His whole legacy is different. But you didn't get it. You didn't get it. But they keep on spinning their tires, not making any progress at all, still trying to win now for nothing. This franchise as a whole collectively is going to have to realize and acknowledge and accept you are not going to win a championship as you are constructed. And if that is really your goal, to win championships and not just games, you're going to have to tear this thing down and start the process of rebuilding it. And that's not an easy thing to do because your mindset for so long has been win now. But you're not going to win now. Not with this coach, not with this quarterback. And you're not going to be able to pay another quarterback. So you got to go draft one. And you got to begin that process. It's got to start this offseason. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.